This video is brought to you by Envato. What's the secret to designing a logo that leaves a lasting impression? Well, it's all about mastering the fundamentals of graphic design. Hello, my name's Daniel White, also known as Dansky, and I'm a designer and instructor with Envato. And in this course, we're going to dive into the logo design process using a recent logo that I created for a fictional coffee brand, Luke's Iced Coffee. So first of all, let's talk about the importance of a logo design in branding. So a well-designed logo is pretty essential for branding as it serves as the visual cornerstone of a brand's identity. And if done correctly, can create a memorable first impression, communicate the brand's values and personality, and help distinguish the brand from its competitors. It builds trust and can significantly influence consumer perception and loyalty. In summary, a logo is a powerful tool that encapsulates the essence of a brand, making it instantly recognizable and relatable to its audience. Now let's do a quick overview of the logo design process. And this typically begins with understanding the brand's identity, their values, and who their target audience is, often through a detailed design brief. And this is then followed by brainstorming and sketching some initial concepts, exploring various ideas and visual directions. You can then refine your best ideas and digitize them using graphic design software like Adobe Illustrator. And during this phase, you can experiment with color schemes, typography, different styles and shapes to create a cohesive and appealing design. Now, if you've seen me work before, my logos will often undergo many iterations just to get the design just right. And of course, you'll need to factor in any feedback from your team or client too. And finally, after working through any revisions, the final logo can be presented to your team or client. And it's a good idea when presenting to showcase the design mocked up in a few real-world scenarios. For example, this could be on the header of a website, or some signage, or some printed material, something that's actually going to be used. This video is brought to you by Envato, the unlimited creative subscription. Find and download quality graphics, templates, photos, and fonts. Follow the link in the description and start creating now. So this particular logo was mostly designed live across multiple days streaming on YouTube, together with a bit of work from home, a bit of work from London Airport, and during my recent flight to Louisiana. So I was working on this all over the place. And being a fictional brief, this one was relatively open, and we came up with the brand name Luke's Iced Coffee, and it was always intended to be fun, like a pop-up style van business selling iced cold drinks in the summer. And the identity needed to embody a refreshing and energetic aesthetic, with ideally some calming colors that evoke the chill and invigorating experience of drinking iced coffee. And in terms of the brand's values, it's all about the quality of the coffee and the customer experience. So professional and reliable, they're not too serious or corporate, so including some more fun and playful elements is a must. And the target audience is young professionals, college students, and busy individuals aged around 18 to 35 who are looking for a convenient and delicious way to stay energized throughout the day. So the brief here was very loose, being just a fictional project and for fun, but if you have a real brief you're working to, it's always a good idea to refer back to it as your design progresses, just to check that what you're creating is fulfilling the requirements set out in the brief. Now, in terms of software, this logo was created almost exclusively within Adobe Illustrator using a variety of different tools and techniques that I'll be demonstrating a bit later in the course. And personally, I don't sketch out anything on paper like ever. I'm more of a digital kind of guy, and I predominantly design with a mouse or trackpad, unless it's something that has a lot of lines and a lot of curves, or perhaps some more organic shapes, in which case I will definitely be using a pen tablet or pen display, because it just makes life a lot easier. So brainstorming really is the beginning of the creative process for me, whether that's mind mapping ideas, or having a bubble with ideas coming off it, or just sketching out things very crudely in the software. I can pull together some initial ideas that will hopefully branch out into new ideas that will be a bit more exciting down the line. Now, let's cover a bit of design theory. And design theory is essential in logo design as it ensures logos are visually appealing, effective, and convey the intended message. Balance ensures that the logo feels stable and harmonious. Symmetrical balance provides a sense of formality and order, whereas asymmetrical balance can create a dynamic and interesting design. Proportion maintains the relationship between different elements, ensuring that no part of the logo overwhelms another. Proper proportion contributes to a cohesive and aesthetically pleasing design. Emphasis highlights the most important elements of the logo, guiding the viewer's attention to the focal point, and this helps in conveying the brand's message clearly and effectively. Rhythm can create a sense of movement and flow within a logo, leading the viewer's eye across the design in a deliberate way. Rhythm can also add a dynamic quality and ensures that the logo is engaging. Contrast differentiates elements through variations in color, size, shape, or type, making the logo visually interesting and ensuring that it stands out. Throughout the design process of the Luke's Iced Coffee logo, I meticulously refined every element to ensure that everything was perfectly balanced, particularly with the logo mark. I started by exploring different layouts and arrangements, and as you could see, some ideas are wildly different to others, and by adjusting things like the size and placement of the text and the logo mark, I was able to achieve a cohesive look that maintains visual interest and readability. Emphasis was created through a strategic combination of fills and strokes to make some areas appear bolder, which I think helped the logo to stand out, especially when compared to some of the earlier designs that were more linear in style. Contrast was another key consideration, so I experimented with various colors and tones to ensure that the logo would stand out. And by balancing the light and dark elements, I was able to achieve a color combination that ensures the different parts of the logo stand out from each other. And actually, these 4 to 5 colors also form a lovely color palette too, that, as you'll see later, can be used for other brand assets, whether it's for the website, packaging, or a repeatable pattern. Now let's talk about typography. Typography plays a crucial role in logo design as it can convey the brand's personality and values through the style and arrangement of text. The choice of font can evoke specific emotions and associations. For example, serif fonts often suggest tradition and reliability, whereas sans serif fonts convey modernity and simplicity. Good typography is easy to read and is memorable, making the brand name easily recognizable and distinctive. The spacing, alignment, and the integration of text with other design elements are also vital in creating a balanced and cohesive logo. So essentially, good typography not only communicates the brand's message, but it also enhances the overall aesthetic and the effectiveness of the logo. And here you can see an example of another logo I designed, and for this one, both the logo mark and the logo type have similar, slightly rounded edges, and this is so both elements of the logo fit together nicely, and this approach also aligns with the brand's values. Now, if we switch this out for some alternative typefaces, you can see this drastically changes not just how the logo looks, but the feelings that it can evoke. And I typically get my favorite fonts from Envato, like just look at these, they have so many good fonts to choose from, and you get everything all within one subscription, and they come with a commercial license too, which is great. Okay, so that's typography. Now let's talk about color. So color theory is vital in logo design because colors evoke emotions, they convey messages, and they influence perception subconsciously. The right color choices can significantly enhance a logo's impact, making it more memorable and recognizable, and different colors and combinations can communicate various brand attributes. For instance, blue often signifies trust and professionalism, whereas red can evoke energy and passion. And understanding color theory helps designers select colors that align with the brand's identity and appeal to the target audience. Additionally, color contrast and harmony are crucial for ensuring the logo's readability and visual appeal across different mediums and backgrounds. So, in short, color theory helps create a powerful visual identity that resonates with viewers on an emotional level. For this logo, I never really left the beige, creamy caramel style colors, but I always wanted an accent color, something completely different to give the brand a more unique flavor and to help it stand out. So now we're going to jump into Adobe Illustrator and I'm going to show you the tools and techniques that we use to create this specific logo. So you can see I've created a new document in Illustrator, and this is going to be interesting because I've not worked on this logo for quite a while now. And typically as part of the logo design process, a design can evolve with small iterations bit by bit. But now I'm looking at the completed logo design with all these different shapes, lines, and curves, and I'm thinking, how am I going to create this? So now we're going to get stuck into some tools and techniques that are perfect for logo design. And I think you'll actually appreciate where things don't go to plan because these are common problems that I come up with, and I'm sure you do as well. And I'm going to show you how to get around them. So first of all, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to start by grabbing the rectangle tool and we're going to draw the base of the cup. Now let's make sure the fill is set to none and we're going to thicken up that stroke weight. And now with the direct selection tool, I'm going to select just the top 2 anchor points and then press S for the scale tool. And we can now scale just those 2 points out. So we've got the bottom tapered in slightly. Now I'm going to grab the ellipse tool. And we're going to click and drag and create an ellipse or an oval. Now, if you've got your smart guides turned on, you can move this around and you'll see it marks the center very nicely. And if we copy this shape and paste in place, we can then drag this copy down slightly. And I'm also going to stretch it out to the side. Remember, you can hold Alt or Option to scale from the left and right sides at the same time. Now let's click and hold Shift to make a circle, and we're also going to move this into position, making sure everything is centrally aligned. If you're not sure, select everything and click this icon here, just to double check, because a big part of this design will be symmetrical, and this attention to detail is going to increase the quality of the final result. Now we've got a lot of lines going on, so with the direct selection tool, I'm going to remove that bottom point on the circle, and this will just make everything a lot easier on the eyes. So let's move this down into position, and I might actually remove this top line here as well. So any of these lines that you're not going to be using as part of your design, I would definitely remove them to make things visually a bit easier to work with. And let's maybe scale these down a bit. And another really useful tip is to switch into outline mode with Command or Control Y, and you get a styleless wireframe of your design. And as you'll see later in the course, this can be very useful for troubleshooting problems. And something else I like to do is copy certain shapes and then move them out to the right or left with the arrow keys, just in case I make changes to the design and then I actually need that original shape. And when I say make changes, I mean this: selecting everything, grabbing the shape builder tool, and then holding Alt or Option and clicking on those endpoints to trim them off. And you can click and drag through different shapes to combine them together, but we'll get back to that a bit later. For now, let's just scale this down and line everything up. There we go. And something else I like to do, if you've ever seen me work live, is I like to drag over everything and make copies all over the place. Just in case something goes wrong, I've got that version to kind of fall back on. So let's trim those away with the shape builder tool. And that's a pretty good start. Very quickly and easily, we've got the main shape of the cup. Now for the bottom, I'm going to delete this with the direct selection tool. I want this to curve slightly to follow the contours of the top part. You can use the curvature tool, but it doesn't mark the center point, which is a bit annoying. So you get a smooth curve, but you're not sure if it's perfectly symmetrical. So that's a no-go for me. So instead, I'm going to grab the pen tool. You can see this one marks that center point, and I can click and drag. Now it can go all over the place. If you hold down Shift, it's going to snap nicely. And as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of symmetry in this part of the design. So what we can do is we're just going to fine tune the left half of the cup. Let's just make that perfectly smooth on that corner. And now I can actually delete the entire right side, that line, and I can select this here and then click O on the keyboard for the reflect tool, hold Alt or Option and click, and then copy that vertically. So now I have perfect symmetry on both sides, and to join these together, I just need to drag over these 2 anchor points, go to Object, down to Path, and select Join, and it will now join these into a single shape. And at least I know that this part of the design is perfectly symmetrical. Now I need to separate this ellipse into 2 halves, so I'm going to copy it, paste it in place, and move one copy out. And I'm going to delete the bottom half of this one, and then on the other copy, I'm going to probably maybe move this down. I'm then going to delete the top half of this one. And this is why I move things around with the arrow keys, because I can now just put them back in place, and I know they're going back in the exact same position they were in before. Now again, I'm going to select everything and use the shape builder tool together with Alt or Option and click to remove these points. So we now have like a dome shape, and I have this other half over here that I can pop back in position. And I'm just going to adjust the stroke weight a bit. We'll make this one a bit thinner and the outer one a bit thicker. And we'll make this bottom one match the top one. And we now need to make space for the straw at the top. So let's just make a rectangle. We'll sample white as the color, pop it in the center, and then again, we're going to use the scale tool to scale that on the left and right edges. Now I'm going to grab the pen tool and I'm going to just complete this bottom shape. It doesn't need to be perfect here, but I do need to be able to swap the fill and the stroke with Shift X, just so I can give this a solid black fill. And of course, it's kind of messed up the contours of the ellipse now. So I need to select the ellipse, and with the eyedropper tool, just hold Shift and click to set the fill color to white. Now I think I'm actually going to move this part out again. So let's put that over there. I'm going to delete this part and bring this back in. You can see why I kept this part earlier, just in case I needed it. And there we go. And now I'm going to grab the width tool. And what I can do is use this tool to make certain parts of a stroke thicker or thinner, or I can double click and enter a specific value. So that bottom part's going to be thicker. This part at the top's going to be a little bit thinner. And with this circle selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Object at the top, down to Path, and choose offset path, and I'm going to enter a negative value, and this will create a copy of this ellipse, but like on the inside. Now it's got those same modifications to the width, so I can change the width profile and set that back there. And I'm going to delete that top point. And now I can use the width tool again. However, instead of doing it on a full ellipse, I'm now doing it just on this one line. So what we'll do is we'll start with the middle, we'll set the width there, and then I can go to either end and taper those in. There we go. And we'll try and scale that up a little bit without messing everything up we've just done. Let's bring that down. And if you want to use the width tool to adjust one side of a stroke instead of both, you can hold Alt or Option and drag when using this tool. Right, let's just spend a second fine-tuning everything we've done so far. Right, now let's play around with negative space, and I'm going to draw a little bit of a kind of curved cut into this part of the cup, and I'm going to use this to try and add a bit more depth and reinforce the shape of the cup. So I've created this shape, and I'm going to set the fill color to white, and we need to match that curve to make it blend smoothly with the other lines. And I'd recommend zooming in super close to get maximum precision, and it's not perfect right now, but we can always come back to that. Right, now let's create another rectangle for the straw, and we'll thicken up that stroke. And we probably do need this extending down into the drink, Dan. There we go. And another reason I like to move certain elements out with the arrow keys on the keyboard is because if they're a bit more complex, I can work on them independently. And then once they're done, put them back into the design. So what I'm going to do here is create an ellipse the same width as the rectangle, delete the top part, and we'll bring that down. And then to create the pattern on the straw, what I'm going to do is grab the arc tool, click and hold Shift to create an arc. And I'm just going to drag this with Alt or Option and Shift to duplicate it, and then press Command or Control D to repeat that same action. And there we go. We pretty much have the straw. And what I'm going to do now is, well, I'm moving it back in manually. I should have used the arrow keys, but I didn't. And this does highlight a problem. It's not central at the minute because something is throwing off the alignment. And it turns out it's actually these arcs. They extend outside of the rectangle. And so I need to select them all and just scale them in so they line up with the edge. There we go, perfect. And now if I zoom back out, I should be able to align this all centrally. There we go, lovely. Right, now for the ice cubes, we're going to grab the polygon tool, click anywhere and type 6 as the number of sides, rotate it 90 degrees, and with the pen tool, click in the center, and we can then click out to each of those corners. And we now have a 3D cube, or what will become an ice cube. And with all of those lines selected, I'm going to press Command or Control X to cut them. Just round off the corners of that shape and then paste those lines back in place. So now I have that same 3D shape, but with slightly rounded corners. And if I create a few copies of this, I can resize them. We'll start with this one in the middle here. Pop that there, because that one is going to be perfectly upright. Let's make that a bit smaller. And then I'm going to duplicate this, make this one a little bit bigger and rotate it slightly to the left. I think the lid and the straw might need to move up slightly. And then I'm going to drag with Alt or Option to duplicate it again and rotate it the other way. Now I need to extend this curve a bit, and I can do that with the pen tool. So something like this. Let's zoom in and fine tune that so it all lines up smoothly. And rather than try and do that pen tooling again in exactly the same way the other side, I'm just going to delete that entire right side. And again, press O for the reflect tool, hold Alt or Option and click, and then reflect it vertically. Right, I'm feeling confident, so let's get rid of that backup and then copy this, paste in place, and then move this out to the left. And I'm going to use the shape border tool to remove that top part, and everything that's left, go to Object and expand a couple times. And what I need to do here is use the shape builder tool to remove the black part at the bottom and just leave me a copy of that ellipse in the middle. There we go. Now I can go to the color picker and we'll pick a color. Let's go for red, something nice and contrasting. Let's create another copy of this, move it up slightly, and with them both selected, press Shift X to swap the fill and the stroke. And I'm going to scale this top ellipse slightly, and you'll see what I'm doing in a minute. So if I select them both and use the shape border tool, I can knock out that top part and then nudge this back in. And I've created like a really shallow crescent moon shape that fits nicely along that bottom edge of the lid. And just like we did before, we're going to use negative space to create shapes that reinforce the shape of the cup. So in this example, it's just going to make everything look a bit more round. Right, now let's spend a minute just fine tuning everything we've done. Now again, we're going to use the shape builder tool, hold down Alt or Option and click to trim those endpoints. There we go. And actually that didn't really work, so what I'm going to do is grab the pen tool instead and use the same technique that we did on the bottom of the cup to create a nice smooth curve. Again, let's just go and fine tune that so it is a perfectly smooth curve. And you probably know what's coming next. Now we've got the left side done, we're going to delete the right side. Just make sure that you look for any stray anchor points like that lurking around. And again, we're going to use the reflect tool to reflect a copy of this shape vertically. And if we zoom in here, there's a gap. Let's select both points with the direct selection tool, and then go to path and average. And this will pull the 2 points into each other, and then you can join them together like we did before. Right, so you can see we're getting there. There probably is a smoother way to do all of this, but that is a big part of using Illustrator, is problem solving, trying out different tools and techniques and combinations, and seeing which one gives you the best result. Right, I think we're definitely getting there. Let's move this bit back up. First of all, there we go. And I think I'll squish this bit down. Then maybe move it up. Right, now I think we'll create a copy of this one and we'll move this out to the left again, just in case anything goes wrong. And I think I'm at the point now where I'm going to start expanding shapes, hence the backup copy on the left. So let's select everything and expand everything. Do it a couple times just until you can't expand anymore. All the strokes are now fills, and we could try and unite this together, but as you can see, it doesn't really work. So we need to use the shape builder tool to remove any white or transparent areas first. And now what we can do is just select the black and then unite that together. And that should combine all these pieces into a single shape. There we go. And if I zoom in a bit, you can see these corners aren't quite round. So I can use the direct selection tool and click on that corner widget to round them off. There we go. Bit of a lifesaver, that feature. And if you click and hold on the shaper tool on the left, you'll find the smooth tool hiding under there. And you can click and draw along paths to smooth them out. Right, I've just grabbed another copy of this ellipse and I'm pasting it in place. And I'm going to change the color to something different. And I wasn't really liking that shape before that was representing the rim of the cup. So I'm going to try and do this a different way and use this ellipse and maybe just adjust it a little bit so it still follows the contours, but I can just get the shape and position right. Let's delete this top half. We don't need that. We just need the bottom half. And I think that's straight, but I'm not sure. I'm going to check. Let's just draw a horizontal line. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, must be just me. And now what I'm going to do is set the stroke color to white. We'll thicken this up a bit. And then I'm going to use the width tool again to adjust the width at various points, tapering in that left and right side. And there we go. Just a bit more fine tuning. Yeah, I think that's definitely better than the previous one. So like I said earlier, it's just sometimes using different techniques to see which one gives you the best result. And you can see I've deleted that other little kind of corner cut as well. So I'm going to recreate this and do a much better job. And sometimes doing it in outline mode where you can just see the path, that wireframe, is sometimes a little bit easier. Yeah, I think that looks a bit better. Maybe just a bit of fine tuning and definitely a bit of smoothing out. In fact, I'm going to take a second just to get this right or it's going to bug me. Right, now let's come back to the straw. So I'm going to select everything, expand those strokes into fills. I can unite them all together. And then what I'm going to do is grab the Live Paint Bucket tool, click on the object to make it a live paint group, and I can now start adding colors. Let's just add some gray in for now, just so we can see. And in fact, actually, I think recreating this will be easier if I actually add the colors that I'm going to use. So let's just create a bunch of circles, and I'm going to enter the hex code for the specific colors I'm using. So this first one is 58CAE8. And the next one along is F9C166, 7C3200, and then the last one, AF5315. There we go, we have a lovely color palette. So now I can select the live paint group again, And then with the live paint bucket, I can click to add this color here, and then use the eyedropper tool to sample a different color, and then switch back to the live paint bucket and just click to add that different color. So I for the eyedropper tool and K for the live paint bucket tool, just so you can switch back and forth between them. Now let's make the rest of the cup that same darker brown color. And I'm going to expand that live paint group on the straw just so I can continue to work on it manually. Now let's bring the ice cubes back in, and yeah, I think that's looking pretty good actually. What I'm going to do now is just maybe shrink that down and then move the ice cubes and the straw. I'm going to make a copy and move it up. I think it'll be easier to work on this separately because otherwise it's just going to be too complicated with all these lines going everywhere. So let's expand these ice cube shapes, and with each ice cube in turn, let's unite them so all of those separate shapes are combined into a single shape. There we go. And we can now use the eyedropper tool to sample that same color as the straw. And I think I might just make a few minor adjustments there. We'll bring the straw down so it goes a little bit more into the drink. Maybe push the ice cubes out to the side a bit. And again, we can select this and use the shape builder tool to combine certain areas together, or hold down Alt or Option and click to subtract certain segments as well. So now you can see the straw is clearly in front of the ice cube behind. And now I've done that and not messed it up, I'm going to confidently delete the other one down below, and then we'll just use the arrow keys to nudge this one back in position. There we go, I think that's the right spot. And now let's zoom in, select everything. And again, I'm going to use the shape builder tool to make sure that the ice cubes are visible and that back part of the cup does not run through them. So you can see I've zoomed in nice and close, and I'm just taking care to actually remove the right parts. But of course, if you make a mistake, you can of course go to Edit Undo and just have another go. Ah, fantastic. There you go. You can see it's all starting to come together. Now I want the ice cubes to look like they're sitting in the iced coffee. So I'm going to use the pen tool to draw half of a kind of curved shape, make that color white, and then reflect it vertically, just so it kind of cuts off those two ice cubes. And I'm also going to add a solid brown shape to the left side of each ice cube. This is just going to act as kind of a shadow. So the top and right side of each ice cube is lit up with a light source, and then the left side would be in shadow. It's just going to help kind of reinforce that depth a bit more. And all of this could still work as a single color design if needed, which is great. Now I'm going to create a coffee bean symbol with an ellipse and a horizontal line. Let's remove that fill and just make sure everything's centered. Very good. And then with the line selected, we're going to add a zigzag. Now, first of all, we need to set this to smooth and change the ridges per segment to, I think, maybe about 2. Adjust the size, and then you kind of get that squiggle. And it's better doing it this way rather than drawing this line manually, because we get that balance and that symmetry, which gives us a better end result. Now we can expand that stroke. Let's do it a couple times. And then we can use the shape builder tool to knock out the black line from the brown ellipse. Perfect. And if we group both halves together, we now have a coffee bean that we can rotate and we can move onto the cup. Let's just flip it around the other way just to match the final design. And yeah, you can see a little bit of back and forth, but we are definitely getting there. However, I've just noticed that the main body of the cup doesn't look symmetrical. Unfortunately, something has gone wrong somewhere, and this is just one of those things that's happened. So I'm going to move a copy of this out onto the right-hand side and try and fix it. And I'm going to start by deleting everything that I don't need to worry about. So it's just really the cup. So let's go and expand everything a few times just so we don't have any strokes there and we know that we're working with fills. There we go. And with the shape builder tool, I can knock out that middle bit so it's transparent. And for that rim highlight shape, I'm actually going to click on it to make it into its own shape. And this does change the color sometimes. So let's just set that back to white. And now I'm going to take the left half, which I think is perfect. That's fine. And I'm going to cover the right half with a shape and select minus front from the Pathfinder panel. That didn't seem to work, so if you get an error, just use the shape builder tool instead. And of course, remove any leftover anchor points. Now we have that perfect half, we can use the reflect tool again to create a copy, and you could combine these together or group them. And we don't want this cut out on both sides, so I'm going to remove it from the right side, so it's only on the left. Okay, symmetrical balance thing solved. Phew. Now I'm going to create a copy of the other design and just remove everything except the straw and the ice cubes, and then drag this back into the center. Nice. Now I do need to bring that gap either side of the straw back in, so let's just move all of this up to the front and make sure everything's centered. And lastly, we just need to grab the coffee bean and bring that in front as well. Again, we're going to center everything. And I'm just going to move the ice cubes in the straw a bit lower and then just adjust that white shape so it's not extending onto the brown. Yeah, that's a bit better. Again, time for another checkpoint. Let's put a copy over there. And now I'm going to select everything and once again use the shape builder tool to first knock out all of the parts that I want to be transparent. And when I say transparent, I mean have no color and whatever background is behind the logo will show through. So let's go and do the same for all of these shapes here. And when you have something a bit more complex like this with lots of lines and shapes, I would definitely recommend zooming in lots when you're using the shape builder tool, just so you don't miss anything. Right, now let's use the live paint bucket tool to add some color here. And we're going to grab that lovely caramel color over here. Oof. And we're going to click to add this in a few places. So we'll add it there for the iced coffee, but also the iced coffee is splashing all over the ice cube. So we're going to add it there as well. Now, if we zoom in, you will see some problems. So we get some of these weird oddities sometimes. And again, going into outline mode is a great way to identify and isolate these problems so that you can delete them. And again, here I've got this weird sort of thin border thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually use the pen tool to draw some brown shapes around the outside. It's not the cleanest implementation, but it won't matter in the end because now I can just use the shape builder tool to combine all of these shapes together. And in fact, I'm actually going to combine a lot of the brown area together. So the straw and the ice cubes. Let's just merge all of these shapes. It's all looking a bit complex at the moment, which can cause a lot of problems. So let's simplify it by combining as many parts together as we can. And I'm going to take a second now just to combine a few more pieces as well. Now, when you get lots of these small pieces, these lines, these can be quite annoying to shape builder tool because you have to be really precise. And sometimes when using this tool, it can also remove the color from your shape, which is a bit weird. So just select it again and reapply the color. And sometimes rather than using the shape builder tool for these tiny pieces, I would use the direct selection tool to just select them and delete them. It's just quicker and a heck of a lot easier. Right, I think we're nearly done. So let's just move all of this over there. And let's pop the final one in the center. And I think it's time we actually got some words in there. So let's move that off to the left. And with the type tool, I'm going to type the word Luke's. And then from the properties panel on the right, I'm going to select the font. It's New Rubric. And if I just scroll down, I think it's a much bolder one. Extra bold. There we go. Oh no, that's the rounded version. A bit too rounded for my liking. I'm looking for New Rubric Edge. There we go. A slight variation that rounds off the corners ever so slightly, which can make the logo a little bit more playful, which goes back to the brand values. Right, now let's start adding the other words. So we've got Luke's, and then we need iced and coffee in there as well. And you can see I've got that blue accent color that I'm going to use for the word Luke's. And then these bottom two words are going to be the brown. And now I'm going to select all of the text and I'm just going to reduce the tracking slightly. The tracking is the spacing between all of the letters as a collective. So they're now just a little bit closer together. And I'm now going to increase the size of the text as well. Let's just scale that up. And at this point in the process, the logo mark just felt a little bit strange. So something I did was actually rotate this so that right edge of the cup lines up nicely with the left edge of Luke's iced coffee. Now you can rotate this manually, but I prefer to use a specific numerical value because if I need to revert back to having the cup perfectly upright, I can just use a negative version of that value to put it back the way it was. So now let's give these two elements a bit of breathing space and then try and center Luke's iced coffee with the logo mark on the left. And now we're going to add a background color. Let's zoom out and send this to the back. And from the color picker, I'm going to sample this nice caramelly iced coffee color. And then we're going to go with like a super light version, like a creamy beige. Yeah, something like that looks good. And this logo design does work as a single color as well, which is great if a business wants to do like a one color print in black, for example, which can be a lot more cost effective. Right, now I'm just going to lighten that background ever so slightly. There we go. And of course, if you spend a bit more time refining everything, you can end up with something like this. And something else you absolutely must check out is Envato's platform that offers millions of creative assets that come complete with a commercial license, so you can use these on your design projects and you don't have to worry about any of that legal stuff. So for this particular logo, I downloaded several different mock-ups to help me get a better feel for how this would actually look when used in different places. And mocking things up in this way makes it a lot easier when trying to sell or pitch your designs to teams or clients. And there we go, that wraps up the course. So hopefully you've enjoyed our time together and can now take everything that you've learned and apply this on your next design project. Thank you once again to Envato for having me here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.